There's this huge geopolitical shift happening right now, almost silently, and it's completely reshaping the Western Hemisphere. It's a quiet takeover, and it's all happening right in America's own backyard. So let's break down how this is all unfolding.
So you gotta ask, right? How on earth did this happen? How did China manage to build such a massive empire of influence in a region that, for decades, has been Washington's domain? Well, that's exactly what we're gonna unravel in this explainer.
And believe it or not, our story starts in a really surprising place. It's not with money, not with trade, but with a startling military simulation that sent some serious shockwaves through Washington.
Okay, picture this. You turn on the TV and you see Chinese state television broadcasting these massive war games. But the crazy part is where they're set, the Caribbean Sea. We're talking right next to Cuba, the Gulf of Mexico, basically a stone's throw from the coast of Florida and Texas.
And the message here? It's not subtle at all. Beijing is basically saying, hey America, we're not just preparing to defend our own territory anymore, they're signaling that the next major conflict could happen right in your sphere of influence. It's an incredibly bold and direct challenge.
But look, a simulation is one thing. To make that kind of threat real, you need a physical presence. You need boots on the ground, or in this case, ships in the harbor. And that's where China's absolutely brilliant port strategy comes into play.
Get this number in your head, 37. That's how many ports across Latin America and the Caribbean are either financed, built, or operated by Chinese state-owned companies. That vast network gives China a level of access and control that is just unprecedented.
And it's not just some abstract threat. A study by the Center for Strategic and International Studies, a major think tank, they flagged these 3 ports in particular as being the highest risk to U.S. security. Their locations are just strategically perfect for China.
This all comes down to a really clever concept, dual-use infrastructure. What's that? Well, on the surface, they look like your average, everyday commercial ports. But the key is they're designed to be flipped for military use in a heartbeat. It's a subtle but incredibly powerful strategy.
So what's the playbook look like? It's a simple 3-step process. First, China uses its economic might to gain control over a port. Step 2, it uses that access to gather all sorts of sensitive intelligence, like tracking U.S. naval movements. And then the final step, if a conflict ever breaks out, they could convert these ports and maybe even launch missiles from what look like perfectly ordinary cargo ships.
Now, a strategy like this, it doesn't just happen. You need an engine to power it, and that engine is a full-blown economic takeover. This is about way more than just military positioning.
I mean, just look at these numbers. They're wild. Back in 2000, China was buying only about 2% of everything Latin America exported. But since China joined the World Trade Organization, that trade has exploded by an average of 31% every single year. Today, it's worth over $500 billion.
And on the surface, it really looks like a win-win, right? China gets the raw materials, the energy, and the food it desperately needs to keep its economy humming. And in exchange, Latin America gets affordable goods, big infrastructure projects, and billions in loans they really need.
And we're talking about a staggering amount of money here. Over a 20-year span, China has just pumped over $120 billion in loans into the region. And look where most of it went. The vast majority to just 2 countries, Venezuela and Brazil, mostly for energy and infrastructure projects.
But let's be clear. This isn't just charity. All that economic muscle, it translates directly into political power for Beijing. We're seeing it happen. One by one, nations are cutting their diplomatic ties with Taiwan to get on China's good side, which is a massive foreign policy win for them.
Okay, so China's making all these huge moves. The big question is, where's the United States in all of this? Well, the U.S. definitely sees what's happening, but its response, let's just say it's been a little shaky.
I mean, you really couldn't have 2 more different approaches. It's the classic carrot versus the stick. China shows up with a carrot, an open checkbook, real investment, things like vaccine diplomacy during the pandemic. The U.S., on the other hand, has mostly been using the stick. Symbolic gestures, a lot of warnings, and pressure campaigns.
To give you an idea of the mismatch, America's big answer to China's multi-trillion-dollar global plan was a project called Build Back Better World. And its budget for the first year? Get this, $6 million. Not billion with a B. Million. It's almost laughable.
So if you're a leader in Latin America, the message you're getting from the U.S. sounds a lot like this. We are an unreliable partner. We don't really do cooperation. We only do coercion. And given the history of U.S. intervention in the region, that's just not a very appealing pitch.
So you've got China's meteoric rise on one side and America's stumbling response on the other. And all of this leads to one big, unavoidable question. What's next? Are we just barreling towards some kind of confrontation? It's like former U.S. diplomat Leland Lazarus said, the choice is pretty stark. If the U.S. and its allies want to stay credible, to stay relevant in their own neighborhood, they have to start offering real, tangible alternatives to what China is putting on the table.
And let me tell you, the clock is absolutely ticking. Just look at this data, which analyst Nassim Nicholas Taleb has highlighted. It shows a massive rebalancing of the global economy. Less than 2 decades ago, the US and Europe combined made up 40% of the world's GDP. Today, that's down to 29%. And China? It's more than tripled its share.
But here's the real kicker from Taleb's analysis. It's not just about the size of your economy. Because it's cheaper to build things in China, $1 spent there on military hardware buys way more than $1 spent in the US. That economic power is translating directly into more efficient military might.
And that leaves us right here with this final, really provocative question. You've got this massive power shift underway. A region that was once solidly in the American camp is now the main stage for a geopolitical chess match. So as this all plays out, is a direct confrontation for the future of Latin America simply inevitable?